So we're just going to say it to you right out loud in really blunt and forthright terms. So much of what you perceive is bogus. And a lot of it, what you perceive about yourself. And a lot of what you perceive about the people around you. You misunderstand a lot of things. You jump to a whole lot of conclusions. A whole lot of conclusions that do not serve you. Now, did you notice we didn't say a whole lot of conclusions that are wrong? We mean a whole lot of conclusions that don't serve you, because what you perceive is valid, because you created yourself into that perception. And this moment in time that you're perceiving is a manifested moment. So I want to tell you a story of something that happened to Esther a couple of weeks ago, so that you'll really understand what we mean about perspective, perception, perceiving, point of view, opinion, what you think is going on. Esther has a house and a guest house in Southern California, and she was there the other day, and she was sitting at her desk looking out of the window. Her desk is in her living room, and she put the desk there because it was the best place to see the ocean from where she was inside the house while she was working. And she hadn't been there in a while, and she hadn't really been paying much attention to the ocean. And she was working on some projects, and she looked up from her desk and looked out toward where the ocean should be, and couldn't see it, because with all of the spring rain, her own trees and bushes had grown out from the border of her property line and had obscured her view. And she thought it was funny that she hadn't even noticed that, but the ocean was gone. She knew it was still there, but she couldn't see it. The gardeners came later that day, and she said, I'm blocking my own ocean view with my own bushes. Now, she is commonly asking them to trim the portocarpus trees, big tall trees that surround the property, so that the neighbors on the hill behind her have a better view over her. She is very conscientious about not blocking the view of her neighbors, and so it was funny to her that she'd completely obscured her own view. And she said to them, could you trim those trees so that I can see the ocean again? And they said, yes, we will. We'll trim them back. And then they said, but there's another tree down in the ravine that is also covering part of your view. And Esther said, well, take a look at it. She said, I only own half of this ravine, so make sure that it is on my property. But anything you can do to clear out my view, thank you so much. And so she went back to work. They went to work. She met a friend, went off to lunch, and was gone all afternoon. And when she came back, she went out on her deck and then into her living room, and then she looked out, and the ocean was back. And she was so happy to see it. And then she looked out across the way, and she saw something that put her heart right in her mouth. 2 big tree trunks cut all the way down to the ground, big ones. And she thought, oh, how could they have misunderstood me? I thought I was so clear. And then she thought, I am going to jail. So she fretted about it and tried not to think about it, and fretted about it and tried not to think about it, and then distracted herself with other things. And a day or two went by, and she was rationalizing, thinking, well, they must have misunderstood me, because I certainly didn't mean for that to happen. And this house where these tree trunks were near, very near, was under renovation. And Esther thought, maybe they are new owners and they don't know those trees were there. Didn't help her feel better. But she tried to think that thought for a day or two. And then she looked out one day, and there was a man in a suit standing out on the patio. He was looking at those tree trunks. Stumps, those tree stumps, all the way to the ground. And then he took his phone out and took a picture. And Esther thought, okay, I better go confess. She had never been to the house. She didn't know how to get there. It's across the ravine. Is the road down and I go up, or is it up and I go down? So she went down first, and it wasn't right. And so she went up around the loop and found her way in. And when she got there, there were several men working in the house doing plastering. And she said to them, there was a man out on the patio a few minutes ago in a business suit. Is he still here? And they said, no, he left. Well, on the several-minute drive, as Esther was trying to find him, she had practiced what she would say to him. I did that, and I'm so sorry, and I didn't mean to do it, and I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'll plant new trees. I'll plant your whole yard. It was a complete misunderstanding, but he wasn't there, so she didn't confess, and she went home and practiced her speech. And then her friend came. They went to lunch, and when they came back, she said, let's park in the lower driveway. I want to show you something. So they walked through the house, and Esther pointed at the stumps, and she said, look what I did. And he said, what? And she told him the story. And he looked and he said, Esther, your gardeners didn't cut those trees down while we were at lunch. The hillside isn't disturbed at all. And where's the debris from all the trees? And how could they have possibly done that in that short a period of time? And then they walked out to the edge of the property, and Esther looked back up toward the other house, and there was a very small little trunk up there with all the debris from the tree that they had cut all still laying right there. They'd cut it down, they just didn't haul anything away. And all that had happened is they cut enough away that Esther saw something that she hadn't seen before. But because of the circumstantial evidence, because of the conversation, she wanted her view. She didn't have her view. She communicated, wanted to make sure that she was communicating clearly, and then saw something that seemed entirely different than what she'd meant, which is something that she lives from time to time, a lot. She says to herself, I must use more words, make sure that I'm clear. And we say, just be in alignment and you'll always be clear. So this has been a sort of ongoing conversation. But Esther completely misunderstood the situation. And this is the part that shook her up. There must be all kinds of stupid things that I believe. All kinds of irrational things. How irrational was that? That these great big trees could be completely cleared in the course of a lunch and a little bit of shopping, and completely hauled away as if a helicopter had come in and just hauled it away when they cut it at its base. When Esther thought about it, she felt foolish. None of that made any sense. But for days she had believed it completely. Our work here is done. How many conclusions do you jump to? How many little pieces of things do you hear? How much do you decide is the way something is just by your brief glimpse into it? How much of what you believe was because somebody that you trusted believed it, and they told it to you often enough that it became the story that you told? You know your point of attraction is something that is under construction all the time. And so you stand with these beliefs, with these perceptions about things. And those perceptions are attracting all kinds of experiences that reflect. Esther's friend said to her, as he was looking at this, you know, Esther, when you told me that that had happened, it just didn't ring true to me, because that didn't seem like something that was in your point of attraction. But understanding perception sure was something that was in her point of attraction. Understanding that things are not always as you believe them to be. So if you think, just because right now you don't have a lot of money, that you're incapable or unworthy of it, that's circumstantial evidence maybe that you've picked up along your physical trail that is not valid. It doesn't have anything to do with your ability or capacity to attract right here and now, unless you keep that belief active within you. And if it is active within you, then the circumstances of your life keep reflecting it in ways that make it keep seeming true. And sometimes you have the benefit of a really good friend like Esther did, who was willing to stand there with her in her pain and evaluate what she was evaluating and not be influenced by what she decided was true. That's why Jesus and so many like him were able and are able to heal. When you stood before Jesus dripping your illness, he did not see your illness. He did not let you convince him of your lack of well-being. He knew, he was secure in the knowing of who you really are. And in that absolute, non-diluted, non-resisted knowing, he was able to dominate the vibrational frequency that surrounded you so that your illness could not be at the same time of that knowing. As a sort of odd comparison we're going to give you here, but it's like Esther remembers being in a van with a CB radio, and when they drove through this one particular neighborhood, they couldn't transmit to the other vans that were traveling with them because there was a man who lived there that had a big tower on his house, and he was broadcasting with such a powerful frequency that he kept everyone else from being able to talk to each other. That's what Jesus did, just for a moment. He broadcasted with such a powerful frequency that it dominated, and if you were anywhere near the vicinity of that, then you couldn't hold your misunderstanding of things. For just that time of that knowing, that's what influence is, you see. And so we want you to think about the influence that your inner being, that your source energy is broadcasting to you. It's a powerful influence, but over time, you've practiced enough erosion of thought, enough misunderstanding of who you are, enough misunderstanding of who others are, enough nitpicking of each other. In your ill-advised, we'll be stronger. Completely misunderstood, we'll be stronger. Ridiculous, in your absolute ridiculous belief that you can control, or that you need to control, and that you can control the conditions or the behaviors of others around you in order for you to live in well-being. You've come to believe in something that defies all of the laws of the universe. You've come to believe in the power of pushing something away, the power of exclusion, when in this universe there is only the power of attraction. There's only the power of inclusion, and what you give your attention to, you include in your vibration. So every time you attempt to right the wrongs of the world by defining the perpetrator of the wrongdoing and pushing against them, all that happens to you is that you practice the activation of a vibration. And you know, when you practice the activation of a vibration, that's what a belief is. A belief is only a thought that you continue to think. So as you practice these thoughts, as you continue to think these thoughts, as you continue to make those vibrations feel normal, and law of attraction helps you too, because once you believe it, law of attraction will show it to you, and show it to you, and show it to you, and show it to you, because you get what you think about whether you want it or not, because law of attraction is responding to your thought. Yeah. You've heard all of that. You've heard of all of that a lot. You've heard of a lot from us and others. But what if you understood today that there is within you a perception, a part of you, a non-physical part of you, who is never dissuaded by circumstantial evidence, who is never believing that controlling conditions is the answer for you, who holds you in knowing of your power and your ability and your goodness? And what if you started deliberately tuning more to that frequency, reaching more for that vibration, so that you're standing in that kind of clarity and knowing? What if you, with a little bit of practice, and it's far less than you would imagine, far less than it takes you to learn a computer program, what if you accomplished vibrational alignment with that perspective? And what if that influence was you? So we're going to open this to talk about whatever you want to talk about, but we just wanted to begin with you thinking a bit about you being under the influence, because you always are under the influence of something. And the question is, are you in the receiving mode, and therefore under the influence of who you really are and what you really want and what your inner being really knows? Or are you under the influence of a bunch of circumstantial events that happened randomly through your life?